Can you use retirement funds to invest in real estate? Lots of people do it with self-direct IRAs. What about some of the other options? Today we're going to show you exactly how, why, and when you can use retirement savings to finance an investment real estate purchase. All right, let's do this. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Finance Agents Live. This is episode number 88, and I am here with the fabulous Ben Morris, who's going to be unleashing serious logic on you today.
All right, Tim.
Hey, what's up, man? Thanks for coming. If you have seen Ben on the show before, then you know that Ben really knows his stuff, especially when it comes to retirement account things for using money trapped in a retirement account for your business or for real estate investing, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So that's it. Today's show, we're going to talk about three things among everything. How it works. How is it possible to use retirement funds in order to finance a real estate purchase? We'll talk about the different types of retirement funds, which ones work, which ones don't, which ones work with Ben. We'll give you 5 real examples of people that have done it successfully and love it, and some things to remember, how to apply all that. So, if you've ever heard of anybody using retirement funds to invest in real estate, what is the one thing that I think everybody knows about? You get a self-direct IRA. That's like the thing everybody knows, right?
Yeah.
So that's relatively easy to do. A lot of people do that. But we got a lot of different types of retirement accounts. So we're going to be digging into that. If you have a specific question, put it in there, and we can see it. We can actually see what you're writing in real time. It's like technology or something. Okay, real quick, next week, come back. It's going to be May 1st, and May 1st is May Day. May Day is the International Distressing Line, whatever. So because it's going to be May Day, we're going to be showing you May Day, how to save your deal from dying, and we've got right there for you a real picture of a loan officer in the wild. This is what you got to be in order to save your deal. You got to go in with the salty, crusty warrior mentality. Here's another picture of a real loan officer in the wild. This could be you, all right? If you're successful, then you're going to be tough, and you got to know that you don't have a deal until you find out what's wrong with the deal and fix it. All right, we got a lot of deals that come in, they look bad to begin with, we fix them, then they go through, and then at the last minute, they always almost blow up, and then you fix it, and then you got the deal, right? So I'm always looking for it. To be a successful loan officer, you got to think of that way. We're going to be talking about that.
So were you just trying to say that if you carry a sword or an axe, you can fix things?
Hey, that's one way to fix stuff. That's kind of like how I do it. You cut through the BS, right? Boom, just cut it. Anyway, all right, moving on. So let's get into this. Ben, what the heck are we talking about here? I put 401k because we do a lot of 401k stuff, but there's other types too. But let's give a general overview on how is it possible to use 401ks for real estate purchases, because I know a lot of other providers or people that do this they say you can't do it, right? Why do they say you can't and you say you can? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, traditionally, self-directed IRAs are what people think of when they think of, especially a retirement account related to a piece of real estate, because it's a passive investment. You buy the property and then you collect some rent. There's not a lot of work involved. There's not a business there.
Passive investment is like the key for working with a self-direct IRA.
Yeah, you can't have any interactions. Always the key term is arm's length transactions, but it's actually doesn't really fit well with real estate. What we've found over the years is that most real estate transactions are very involved. They're not very passive.
Like the warriors in the last slide. Mm-hmm. They're with an axe.
They don't sit at home. So what we have is a structure that's designed for active businesses. And so traditionally, real estate being seen as passive, now as time goes on and there's more experience, we realize that it's more of an active investment. So it's no longer fitting as well with the passive self-directed IRA. It's starting to fit better with what we call a business-directed.
Is one of the things with passive means you got to own it for at least a year, or what's the termination between active or passive? Is it how long you own it?
Yeah, I mean, there certainly could be a factor. Mostly what we look at when we're looking at an active investment is the business owner or the IRA owner, how involved were they in the asset making money?
So like if
Did
they're
they have to
acting
rehab
as the property manager, you can't use an IRA. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah.
If you're a property manager, you can't use an IRA. If you're rehabbing it, if you're flipping it, you can't use an IRA. What else?
Yeah, I mean, you certainly could set up those structures, but what you'll run into is what we call UBIT, which is the IRS sees, okay, you did
UBIT?
turn around and flip that property, and it wasn't held for longer than a year, like you said. So that wouldn't qualify as passive.
UBIT.
They see it as you turned around some inventory, and they apply unrelated business income tax.
There's the UBIT. I was looking for that. Unrelated business income tax.
Yeah.
What's that mean? They're saying it's...
It just means they see it for what it is. That was a business transaction. You bought a property, you flipped it, that you were selling inventory. That is not a passive investment, which is what that self-directed IRA is for.
Okay, all right.
So they tax it accordingly. It's not as exorbitant as the distribution taxes or penalties, but it is a tax, and the whole point is to avoid taxation on that IRA.
Okay, so what we're talking about is ways you can use funds pulled from retirement accounts. We'll talk about the different types of accounts in order to actively invest in real estate, which works for fix and flippers, works for people that just like buy and sell, maybe like a wholesale buy and sell, or you want to buy and you want to be the property manager because you got renters in there, which makes sense. I mean, you don't want to be forced to hire a property manager when you could do it yourself. Maybe you really like fixing toilets and having tenants. Right? Maybe you love it. You want to go collect money with your hands? You need a 401k then. All right. Or some other type. So let's talk about the different types of retirement accounts and see which ones fall into this bucket. So we know IRA, passive. I know you know like 20 different types of retirement accounts that I don't even know. So give us a run through on what could qualify.
Yeah. So anything that's an employer account usually has a number, 401k, 403b, 457a. It all just depends on who your employer is. If it's a privately traded company or a private company, it's a 401k. If it's a public, like a government account, or you work for a fireman or something like that, it's going to be a 457 or a 403b. So anything with a number, that's always going to be a good sign.
They're all the same to you.
They're all the
401k, whatever the heck else you said, numbers work.
Yeah. Outside of that, you have individual retirement accounts, and those are great because you have full control over them. So
that's
you
the
can move
IRA
them.
that we were
That's
talking
an
about.
IRA. There are some accounts that aren't considered retirement accounts, or maybe you look at them as a retirement account, but the government doesn't. A great example is a life insurance policy. A lot of people use that as
Whole
a retirement
term.
savings vehicle, but it's not a retirement account, so doesn't qualify for this type of transaction.
What about an HSA savings account?
Also, not a retirement account. It is a great way to save on taxes. And, you're paying for your medical expenses directly without paying any taxes, but it's not a retirement account.
What about a SEP? What's a SEP anyway?
A SEP is where an employer puts money into an account for you. So it's kind of like a...
It sounds like a 401k.
Yeah, it's just like a 401k.
So
of course,
SEP does work,
Yep.
even though it's letters.
Yeah.
Even though it's letters. What about a Roth IRA?
Currently, the IRS doesn't allow us to take Roth IRAs and put them in a 401k.
Come on.
plan. You could take a Roth 401k and bring it to a Roth 401k, but because the restrictions and limitations of a Roth IRA doesn't jive well with the 401k. So what I would caution you against is using that or deterring individuals from looking into this type of financing because they have a Roth IRA. Usually a Roth IRA is just a small portion of people's portfolios.
Right.
So although that Roth can't be used, we probably could use some of your other accounts.
Because you're the retirement account magician. You can make magic, right?
Yeah, just send over whatever.
By the way,
you
I'm
have.
not kidding. I'm seeing him do a lot of cool stuff. And 2 weeks from now, come back, we're going to be talking about using 401k funds to finance for marijuana businesses, right? So when I say the magician, boom, he's going to come back and smoke, I don't know, insert marijuana joke. Okay, so we got lots of different types of retirement accounts. What you see the most is 401ks, though, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Are 401ks. Okay, cool. All right, so we know what kind. Let's talk about the different types of real estate. Doesn't matter if you're doing a single-family residence versus multifamily versus commercial. What if you want to buy raw land? Industrial. Does it matter what type of real estate it is for this type of transaction?
I'd say no. Pretty much, regardless of what type of property is, whether it's land or commercial property, whether it's a single-family unit or a multifamily unit, does not matter. What really matters is the business owner and the IRA owner. What is their involvement? And once we navigate that and figure out, how they are interacting with the property, that's where we can say yes or no to the transaction.
All right, so for this to work, you're going to create what we call a BDRA, a Business Directed Retirement Account, and you're going to do something in it which makes it okay to invest in real estate. We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. This business directed retirement account is a new 401k under the business of the business owner, so they're going to need to have a legal entity, and then that legal entity needs to be the owner of the real estate. Is this all right?
Yep, that's pretty much it.
Okay.
The way that this works is the retirement dollars are being used for a property, and when the property is sold or when it charges rent, the profits from that go back into the retirement account. And so as long as that structure is maintained, and pretty much a lot of things work, there's just a lot of time and effort that we have to put into compliancing them.
Okay, all right, but you can still write off expenses, depreciation on the house, or the cost to do stuff, right? It doesn't have to go straight in. It goes to the company, and then the profits can be put into the
so the
account,
corporation is realizing all of those benefits. That's the main trade-off. Is if your retirement account is going to fund it, then the retirement account gets the benefit of all those taxes and write-offs. Whereas if you fund it with your personal dollars, then you personally are taking the write-offs on your personal tax return. So as long as we're putting that divider up, and you can't have your cake and eat it too. Either your business is the one that's benefiting, or you are the one that's benefiting.
But you can have a salary from the business. I mean, that's normal for a business to pay a salary to its owner, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Great. So you're getting a business, or you're getting a benefit, but you're doing it the legal, documented way, and we're good. Okay. So all kinds of real estate, all the retirement accounts that have numbers in them, and some of the ones that don't. So we know about what does work. Tell us about something that doesn't work. When can we not do this?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, the type of real estate doesn't really matter, but usually times that don't work are usually single family units because it's pretty clear who's benefiting. So when a business owner comes to me and says, hey, can I use my retirement account to buy a property? I say, great, yes, do that. And they say, can I rehab it? Can I use the money from the retirement account to rehab it? Yes, go ahead. And they say, well, then can I live in it? No. That's when you're starting to receive a personal benefit from that property. They say, okay, great. Can I sell it to my son or my son-in-law? No. So once you start to receive a personal benefit, that's when the answer is just no. So that happens a lot with single family units. Now, if it's a commercial property, well, there's some leeway there. And that's not part of the examples today, but a great example is like a general store, or something downtown where there's an office or a retail storefront below, and then there's living quarters above. It's very easy for us to make an argument that is a business property, and it's a business expense, and for the business owner and the retirement account owner to be serving as a manager, working at the retail location and living upstairs, that's doable.
Okay, let's say you wanted to let's say you own the property already, it's your house, you're living in it, and you want to use the money to build a mother-in-law unit in the back, and then you're going to rent that out on Airbnb. That's a business. What do you think? I know we didn't prep for this one, so I'm just throwing stuff at you here, but
I would say no to that because it's your personal property. It's not owned by your corporation, and it'd be difficult to determine which expenses were going to the mother-in-law unit, which expenses were going to the primary house, and then it'd be really difficult to understand who's benefiting when the Airbnb is paid. Are they paying your corporation? Are they paying you personally? And even if they did pay the corporation, what if they left a tip? It's not doable.
Okay, cool. All right, so it doesn't work for your own house, dang it, even if you try to pretend like you're selling it to your daughter or something, so scratch that out. But all other actual business uses where you're not just trying to be shady or work one over on somebody, I don't know, whatever. It seems fine to me, but can't do it, not this way. All right, so let's get in some real examples of real people who are super happy right now because they just did this.
Sure.
Let's go to Texas.
Yeah.
What do we got in Texas?
Well, I like this example because, again, it's a single-family unit. It's something that somebody bought. They bought a distressed property that was under foreclosure. They bought it with their own money, and they bought it in their own name. So for all intents and purposes, originally, it was their property, but they never intended to live there. It was never intended to be sold to a family member. They paid out of pocket to buy the property, and they paid for all the expenses to rehab it. The business owner was a contractor, so he put in his own time to make the changes and to improve the property without necessarily charging anyone. He didn't have to pay for that expense. So they came back to us and they said, hey, what can we use our retirement account for? We want this to be more of a business. We don't want to benefit personally from this property. So I asked them to transfer the deed to the corporation, meaning that they are no longer the owner. Now their corporation is an owner. It's very important to note that they didn't sell the property to the corporation. They just deeded it over, meaning that that was their contribution. They're giving that to the corporation, which doesn't always necessarily sound great to people.
Right.
But in this case, because the corporation wasn't buying the property, the corporation could compensate them for that. In other words, if they paid $40,000 and then the corporation pays them $40,000, there isn't any appreciation, there isn't any profit shown, so it's not a sale. It's a transfer of the deed, and then the corporation's just reimbursing them for that expense.
So they can only do it for the hard costs, right? Like the acquisition costs and maybe the physical items put in. But what if they'd used a general contractor? Could they have reimbursed themselves for the cost of the general contractor?
Yeah, absolutely.
So because they were the contractor themselves, they could not compensate themselves for that time.
Yep, that was the only thing they couldn't recoup was his time, which again he didn't pay anybody to do that.
And long term, he gets a benefit from it anyway. So
yeah, long term they get to charge rent directly out of the corporation. Corporation makes the money, and then if they want to pay themselves salaries, they can. So they still get a benefit, but it's just about going about it the right way. And luckily, they came to us first before they did anything illegal.
So this is great. So they did this after they'd already done all the rehab. So they said, "Whoa, hey, I can do that." And okay.
Yeah, so
awesome.
It's never too late.
All right, now before we get into the other examples, probably the most frequent reason that people do this with us for loans is that they want to use the money to couple it with a loan as the down payment, right? So there's fix and flip lenders out there that will lend up to 90% of the purchase price and up to 100% of the rehab costs. You got to cut them in with that 10% of the purchase and have money for 3 to 6 months payments if you're not crazy. So you could use retirement funds for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a legitimate business expense for the corporation to say, we want to buy a property, we don't have enough money, we need to mortgage it, but we have this cash on hand that came from a retirement account.
And you can do it over and over and over again, but when they do actually sell the flip, all the proceeds need to go into the business, and some of it needs to go in the retirement account, or there's a time period.
Yeah. So if you were focused on growth and you said, well, I only have this $20,000 for a down payment, you bought a $100,000 property, you then flip it, sell it, pay off the mortgage, and now you have $120,000 or $100,000. Then you could use that as a down payment for an even bigger house. And so you could grow your business that way, or you could buy multiple properties and continue to do that. There's a lot of options, but your retirement account can always be used as the down payment for a business transaction.
Awesome. All right, cool. So example number 2, let's talk about the Washington couple. What did these guys do?
Sure. So this is something similar where they acquired a home under their personal name. It was a residential property, but they never intended to use it for that. They converted it to a salon pretty much immediately. And they had a note with the bank, for a very low interest rate, and they wanted to maintain that note. So we certainly could have gone through the process, with like the previous couple and transfer the deed to the corporation, but they weren't concerned with reimbursing themselves for any expenses. They just wanted to be able to make new improvements on top of what they had already done. So we did use the BDRA to roll retirement dollars in and build out the salon even more, make it additional improvements. But we didn't transfer the deed in this case because they wanted to maintain that low interest rate note, which is generally a requirement. What we were able to do in this case is create a note between the corporation and the business owner so that eventually the deed would transfer once the loan or the note with the bank was settled.
Just a short 30 years.
Well, it was much shorter than that actually. It was only a 10-year note. And that was our cutoff with depreciation and with the bank note. We had to draw the line at some point, but we were able to draw up a note in that case where the corporation is compensating them for the build out, but is going to be receiving the benefit of that note. The primary reason why we did this is because they bought the home, even though they never intended to live in it, they bought it with a personal mortgage. So they didn't tell the bank that they were going to use it for business. So they got a very favorable rate, as opposed to if they told the bank they were going to be using for business, they probably would have paid a lot more in interest.
Yeah, banks always work you for more money. Anything having to do with the business, your phones cost more, everything costs more because you have a business.
Yeah. So
what do you do?
They were afraid that if we refinanced under the corporation, that the interest rate would be much higher. So
Very likely.
And that's true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we could just circumvent the rules just for them to save some money on interest.
I'm trying to imagine what a house looks like that gets converted to a salon. That sounds interesting. Very comfortable. Are there couches? Did you see pictures of it? I'm curious if you saw.
No, but it's in Pacific Northwest, so
well, I
very
used to
cozy.
live there.
Looked like an Airbnb.
Is it like Seattle or?
No, it's out in the boonies.
Out in the boonies.
Yeah.
So you took a country house and converted it to a hair salon?
Yeah.
And did they live in it too?
No one lives in it.
That's a big salon.
That's a big
out
salon.
in the country.
Yeah.
All right.
Could have been a really small house.
What else are you doing? Is raining all the time?
Hey, maybe they could convert it into doing
your hair
like
done.
spa things.
Yeah, that's what the build out was for. So it was already operating
Oh.
as a salon.
They put in a sauna.
Darren knows exactly.
That's
what
what you do when it's
Say,
raining. You go sit in a sauna.
What do you do with that type of house? I mean, you convert it into a spa. If you have a yard, so your tea, like grass area and everything. So
Right, tea garden. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like an interesting application. I'd love to see pictures of it, by the way. All right.
Sure.
Next, we went from Washington to Georgia. Man, we have a lot of stuff going on in Georgia. I see stuff
booming.
coming through from
Yeah.
Atlanta all the time. Fix and flip is just raging out there. The area is growing very quickly. So here we've got a Georgia fix and flipper. What do they do?
Well, in this case, just like when you need to use the money as a down payment because you don't have enough, in this case, they had individuals that were willing to put money in to acquire the property. But the rehab cost, because there's more risk involved with that, it's harder to recoup. Investors didn't really want to get involved in the rehab. So what they did was we created a corporation, funded it with their retirement account, and then they sought out their investors for the acquisition. Investors paid for the acquisition, they paid for the rehab, and then they figured out a way to split the profits when they fixed and flipped.
That's an interesting one because when I'm looking at them, I'm thinking they must be doing a high volume. It seems like it would be easier just to get loans for the acquisition instead of investors. It's way cheaper to get a loan than work with a private investor. Typically, the investor's going to want half of your profits. The loan, you just got to pay the debt, and if you have the money for the rehab costs, or you could do the other way around. You could use your retirement funds for the acquisition costs and finance the rehab. We know lenders will do that all day long, even if you have a 500 credit score. If they're just financing one of the two, that'd be really easy. So that seems like an interesting application to me. So much easier to work with a lender than an investor. Yeah, what's
So the reason why they use the investor is because the investor actually brought them to us. So the investor wanted to work with this individual to rehab a property, and they were also an agent. So as they realized that this individual had a retirement account, they contacted us, we complianced it, and got it done. So the entire time the investor knew exactly what was happening, and as soon as it was funded, they were ready to pull the trigger. So
sounds smart. You can pick up houses for like 50 grand in Georgia sometimes, even with the craziness. The other day I had a house submitted to me for a loan, and I looked at it on Google Street View, which is amazing, by the way. And interesting house. And then as I pulled back, I was like, that one's condemned next to it. That one's condemned. The whole street was condemned except for that one house. A lot of buying opportunities.
Just a matter of time.
Buying opportunities. That's what I call them. All right, cool. Example number 4, California hotel developer. This is a bigwig, right? You're fixing up hotels. What did you do for these people?
Well, I like this example just because it shows that this can fit with large transactions.
Not just for the small fries.
Yeah, not just for small fries. So this individual, what she really wanted was to create a boutique hotel, which she had done for her employers in the past in Nevada. So she had developed some casinos and hotels. She felt like she knew a lot about how to make a really profitable rental unit, short-term rental hotel. So what she was very aware of what she needed was how to acquire the land, how to get the correct entitlements for a hotel, everything that she had learned in her past experience. What she did need to outsource was things like architects, engineers, and legal, basically attorneys. So that was something she knew she needed to pay for, but as large transactions goes, she knew that the real build out and the land acquisition and all that stuff is going to be probably footed by a real estate trust or investors. So that's what we did. We used the BDRA to acquire the land and the entitlements. So everything that she knew that she had to have before she reached out to architects, engineers, and investors. Those are the types of things, basically she wanted to have her deck in place.
Right. if you are doing real estate investing or development, then you probably already know financing the land is by far the hardest thing to get a loan on. Lenders hate it. Even in this best case scenario, they're usually giving you maybe half the value of the land. So you got to be able to come in with cash for that first thing. Once you own the land and it's legal to build on it, this is why the investors don't like it. They don't want you to buy a piece of land and all of a sudden you can't get it through zoning,
Sure.
and you're stuck with that thing for 10 years. Nobody else in the world wants to buy it, and then the market turns. Next thing you know, you're upside down 300%. That happens. So land is really hard to finance. So this person clearly used the retirement funds to finance the land acquisition, and then it's much more straightforward, or nothing. I don't want to say anything's easy.
Sure.
A lot easier to finance the construction and build up costs through lenders that specialize in that.
Yeah,
but
there's
on the
no way
land
that
side,
this would have been possible for Joe Schmo to come in, or somebody, a layman, to come in and decide to take on this project. You have to have somebody that already knows the business
Right.
and knows what they need to do to zone it properly and get the land acquired.
Yeah, I got a call the other day. Somebody's like, "Hey, I want to buy this $10 million building," and I was like, "Well, how much money do you have?" Nothing. I'm like, well, no. All right. You got to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You want to do something like that. Okay, so last one, we're really talking about somebody who really knows what they're doing. In case you're watching this thinking, this is great for a little guy who wants to put in 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 grand into a development. We're sort of going up the food chain.
Sure.
This last guy is doing all sorts of cool stuff. Let's hear about East Coast Real Estate Developer, example number 5.
So I really enjoyed spending time with this mogul. He has, really has a dynasty that he's created of, a rehab company or a construction company. He has a real estate agency, and he would, go out into individual ventures, find investors, figure out a good spread between who's putting down what money, and then he would outsource the construction and real estate aspects to his own companies. And so he kept it all in the family, and that's why he was so successful. He really didn't need financing for any of that. It was already up and running. It had been up and running for 20 to 40 years, depending on which business we were looking at. But he did want to acquire his own building that he was going to put all of his businesses in, house his construction company and his real estate agency. And that's where he looked at this and he said, well, my retirement account would be a great investor for that. This would normally create a lot of problems. If somebody came to me off the street and said, I want to start a construction company and a real estate agency, and I want my retirement account to fund it all.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I want to start all these at once.
We would have to put everything under the retirement account. We would have to say that that's the umbrella corp and it's okay to have other businesses. But in this individual's case, we're able to establish the corporation that's funded by the retirement account as the property manager. It's gonna buy the commercial property and then rent it out to his construction company, his real estate agency. And the only reason why we're able to do that is because he already has a track record for these things. We can go back 20 years and show examples of how much he's been charging for real estate or for his agency, how much he's been charging for construction and rehab. And we could make that argument and say, listen, he is not receiving a favorable transaction. He's getting the same price that he would charge anybody else. And although that is an important part of making that argument, ultimately there is liability in this.
Right.
It's not something where we can completely sign off on it. We really do have to kind of write a CYA letter and just say, hey, here's our determination. And ultimately, there is some exposure here. So that's something that really only is open or available to us as a consultant, because whereas a major provider, they would just have to stay away from it. They can't write a letter saying, here's the extent of our determination, or here's what we think you should do, but the liability is on you, because they're a much bigger company that is exposed to lawsuits themselves. Where in our case, because we're able to look on a case-by-case basis, have an attorney write a letter and say, here's what you can do, but there is risk involved and it's up to you. So I think that as far as to sum this up is, with smaller businesses and with businesses that are starting new, there's a certain path of compliance. As people grow, we grow with them. We provide solutions that grow with the business.
Great. All right. So if you're kind of picking it up here, there are a lot of providers that can do 401k conversions that allow you to use 401k funds for your business in general. They have a cookie cutter like They're banging out thousands of these.
Or a solo 401k.
Right.
or
They
loan.
want everything to be the same, so it's just. Ben is really the opposite. He likes the weird stuff, kind of like we do with the real estate deals. He wants the hard things. He digs into it, right? The weirder and harder it is, the more he enjoys it. So you get a challenge for Ben. Boom. Bring it to us. If you're interested in doing this, if you're not an agent with us, sign up as an agent. Go to FINANCEAGENTS.com and register as an agent. You can submit your clients to us. If you're just interested in getting it for yourself, go to Finance Agents, put in your information, somebody will call you, and you can talk to the real Ben if you're lucky, right? If you work through a couple hurdles, you talk to the real Ben and get the real deal help. All right, and Frank wants me to call him.
And talk to agent manager or to you. I just started opening up some time slots for one-on-one with member offices as well.
Okay, right. So if you're member office with us, you're watching this, you want to talk to Ben, we're going to be setting up individual calls for him to dig into it. So you can do the retirement or do the real estate purchases and the marijuana, right? We'll be talking about that in 2 weeks. Last chance, if you got any questions, probably not going to have them before I close this out, but don't forget, next week, May Day, come with your game face on, ready to get dirty, find out how to save a dying deal. Remember, you don't have a deal until it almost dies, and you bring it back from the brink, right? That's the mentality you want to have. We're going to be talking about that next week. With that said, thanks everybody for coming on the show. Thank you, Ben, for enlightening us, as you always do. And we look forward to doing a lot more deals together.